had several goals for the day, and one of those was listening to our speakers. Thank you for doing that. One of those was sharing. Thank you for participating in the breakout session, collaboration, and sharing your thoughts and questions, and the networking that's taking place here as well. Just a reminder that you have the Spark cards there. There is a basket on the registration table where you put those, so you have opportunities to win prizes at the end of the day, something to look forward to. We're about halfway mark. We have many more folks to talk to you and to talk with one another. Just wanted to kind of summarize some of the morning takeaways, because with two rooms, not everybody can be in one place at the same time. So I wanted to just share with you. We had folks talking about different local opportunities that were happening, a collaboration that's happening in Thurston County called Thurston Thrives, opportunities through Habitat for Humanity of Mason County and Homes First. We also heard in that local opportunities session information from the Olympia Master Builders. And one of the things that stood out to me about that was, so what happens if we were to automatically, here on the 3rd of January, produce 1,000 new homes? Well, that would account for almost $40 million in local income, just over $9 million in taxes and other revenue for local governments, and 733 local jobs. So kind of a cool statistic, I think. I don't know how to go up and wave the magic wand, but that's what we're here trying to figure out. We had a snapshot of what the local workforce looks like. Interestingly enough, the population density is the highest per square mile here in Mason County. Also, probably to notice, big surprise, the largest sector of our workforce are government employees participating. Residents of Mason County that are working outside of the county has grown since 1980. We're now just north of 43%. Pack Mountain provided that information to us as well. We had some statistics provided to us by our local realtor about what does it take for somebody that's earning the median income of just about $52,000. What kind of home would they be able to afford? It's about a $100,000 home. So breaking down the numbers, so we're not just talking about theoretical things. What about potential solutions? Different locations share that there's various ways to incentivize the private market to build affordable units by expediting permitting and upzone properties, mitigating fees, and tax flexibility. So these are all quick takeaways, quick snapshots of some of the highlights. There were many more that I'm sure that each of you took away. So help me thank all of our morning presenters. So the general session here at lunch is focused on our elected officials' perspectives. And I did want to take a moment to recognize we have a great number of elected officials that are here with us. As you know, Congressman Heck and Congressman Kilmer are not here. Representatives from their office are here. So Dallas Roberts and Rob Richards from Congressman Heck and Congressman Kilmer's office are both sporting their sweaters for this winter-like weather this morning. I'm going to read down a list of who I think the elected officials are that are here, and then I will ask anybody else that's elected to stand up as well, because I don't know if this is a complete list, and we'll hold our applause and thank you until the end. Representative Drew McEwen, Mayor Bob Rogers, if you could all please stand so we can see how many of you are committed to this conversation. Deputy Mayor Deidre Peterson from the City of Shelton, Councilmember Joe Schmidt, Councilmember Kevin Dorsey, past Mason County Commissioner Terry Drexler, Commissioner Randy Netherland, Commissioner Kevin Schutte, Mason County Treasurer Lisa Frazier, also from the Port of Allen, Commissioner Scott Cooper, from the Port of Shelton, Commissioners Christy Buck, Sue Patterson, Dick Taylor, and I would be remiss as the CEO of Financial Cooperative
the elected officials on my board, Vice Chair of the Peninsula Credit Union Board, John Bolender, Sue Bernard, and Lisa Frazier. Anybody else, I apologize if I overlooked you, but please help me thank all of these elected. Oh, one more. We also have Steve Wright, who's elected to our board of directors. Steve is the fire chief for South Kitsap. So help me thank all of these folks. We have two questions that we are posing to elected officials at each level of our government, federal, state, county, and local city municipalities. What can your level of government do, and what do you need from the community, from us, in order to help support you in doing that? We're going to have the panel come up here in just a moment, but first we do have some comments from Congressman Kilmer. Derek Kilmer serves as the United States Representative of Washington's 6th Congressional District. Congressman Kilmer has over a decade of experience working in economic development in the Puget Sound region. He was re-elected to a 4th term in the U.S. House of Representatives in 2018 and serves on the House Appropriations Committee, Interior and Environment Subcommittee, and Commerce, Justice, and Science Subcommittees. The new Democratic coalition that you heard about earlier today is a centrist pro-business caucus committed to bridging the gap between left and right by challenging outmoded partisan approaches to governing. This past Friday, Congressman Kilmer was elected as chair of that group for the 116th Congress. Derek and his wife Jennifer live in Gig Harbor with their daughters Sophie and Tess and their Australian Shepherd Truman. So if this works, we have some comments that Congressman Kilmer would like to share.
Hey folks, Representative Derek Kilmer here. I'm sorry I couldn't join you today in person, so I'm doing the next best thing, sending you a long and boring video. I was asked to give you an update on Congress. I admit I'm a little reticent to do that since I'm told this will be shown while you're eating. In all seriousness, let me focus on the two questions that Jim Morrell asked me to answer. First, what can the federal government do to help address the workforce housing challenge? Now, I wish I could tell you that there's a silver bullet to making progress on this issue, but I think it's more like silver buckshot. I can give you a ton of examples, but let me give you 5. Number 1, as the federal government addresses housing issues, it should preserve the stuff that works. For example, when it considers GSE reform, it needs to preserve those tools that make the purchase of a home a reality, things like the 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. So many Americans have purchased a home with an FHA loan or with the VA benefit. This matters. When the FHA underwrites a loan, when the VA helps cover those upfront costs, that's money that stays in people's pockets. These benefits should be bolstered and not diminished. The federal government should invest in programs that each of us know are successful in supporting affordable housing development. Now, unfortunately, we've seen an erosion in the value of the low-income housing tax credit, which enables investments like this to pencil. We've seen a reduction in federal programs like Community Development Block Grants and the HOME program, which support affordable housing efforts. The USDA Rural Housing Service has programs that have helped hundreds of thousands of people, but that agency has seen its budget cut. The Department of Housing and Urban Development has seen its budget attacked, and that's when they're not being subjected to a shutdown, as they are right now. As a member of the Appropriations Committee, these are trends I'm hoping to move in the opposite direction. Second, part of the reason we have an affordability challenge is that, simply put, we need more homes. There are a lot of factors that come into play there, everything from lumber prices to land availability to access to capital. But part of the reason we need more homes is that we need more home builders. The federal government can take actions to ensure that we have enough folks with enough skills to build new homes, and the infrastructure that supports them too. As your representative, I've been focused on new federal policies to support career and tech ed programs and apprenticeships and other efforts that will encourage folks to enter the trades. 3, we need to make sure there's adequate access to capital. Community-based lenders are really important. They value their customers. They understand that whether you are a home builder or a person looking to buy your first home, you are a neighbor. Let's make sure that if you're a qualified buyer, you can actually get a mortgage and buy a home. It was vital that Congress passed protections for consumers to ensure that they aren't taken advantage of. That's important. But there's also an opportunity to simplify some of the regulations and cut through the red tape that often stands in the way of a home builder being able to move forward with a project, or that keeps someone from getting the keys to that new home. 4, infrastructure matters. Some of the road infrastructure and water infrastructure that developers take for granted in urban areas can be harder to come by in rural areas. I'm pushing for Washington, D.C. to make some big investments in infrastructure, but to make sure those investments aren't just focused on urban areas. And fifth, one of the best ways to address housing affordability is to grow economic opportunity. We know that housing costs are generally lower in rural communities, but so are incomes, and poverty rates and unemployment rates are unfortunately higher. We know that when more people are able to make a decent living, they're more likely to be able to afford a decent home. As many of you know, I used to work in economic development professionally, and part of the reason I've focused on issues from rural broadband to increasing harvest levels in our federal forests, to helping rural small businesses, to trying to leverage the tax code to encourage investments here, is because I think we need a laser focus on creating more economic opportunities for more people in more places, and that'll continue to be my focus. Now, finally, Jim asked me to address what all of you can do to help. It may seem simple, but perhaps my most important direction is to keep focusing on these issues related to workforce housing. This matters. This matters to local employers. It matters to the strength of our community. Affordable housing is vital if we're going to make work pay for working families. And it matters to every individual who wants the economic security to know that they can keep a roof over their heads. I still remember when Jen and I got the keys to our house, walking in for that first time. And in the years that have passed, seeing our kids grow up in that home. It's been a dream for us. And listen, these issues are part of the American dream. So I'm grateful to Jim Morrell and the Peninsula Credit Union and all of the folks involved here today. Keep focusing on this issue because we know that it's central to the economic security of the middle class. And beyond that, please count me as a partner. If you've got ideas that come out of today's discussion, if your organization is interested in applying for a federal grant and wants a letter of support, if you know of someone who's grappling with a federal agency, I invite you to keep me on your speed dial. I work for you, so keep it up. And Happy New Year. I'm excited for what's ahead for us.
So at this time, I'd invite the other gentlemen on our panel to come up to the
Stage and so what we're going to do here over the next 45 or 50 minutes or so is have each elected representative share their thoughts on the two questions that we're posing to them. I'll introduce each person. I know that they are very well known to all of you. Sometimes some of the details about the hard work and commitment that helped them get to where they are up in front of you right now is forgotten. So please bear with me as I go through the introduction, and we'll start with State Representative Drew McEwen. Drew was first elected to the House in 2012 and emerged as a leader on issues including tax reform and education funding reform, rooted in his experiences as both a business and civic leader in this community. Drew is on the House Republican leadership team, currently serving as Assistant Floor Leader. He is also the assistant ranking member on the House Appropriations Committee and serves on the House Capital Budget and Health Care and Wellness Committees. Additionally, he serves as the co-chair of the Joint Committee on Veterans and Military Affairs and the Joint Task Force on Economic Resilience of Maritime and Manufacturing in Washington. He is also an ex officio member of the Washington Wildlife Recreation Coalition. Drew is active in several community organizations, including Rotary, Love Inc., Mason General Hospital Foundation, the Shelton YMCA, Kitsap Medical Society, and is a member and past president of the Shelton Mason Chamber of Commerce. Drew is an active member of the St. David's Parish community in Shelton, a strong advocate for funding education first. Drew is also committed to reforming the state's business and occupation tax code, improving government accountability, and encouraging private sector job growth to boost the economy. He's been recognized by local groups as well as the National Federation of Independent Business and Association of Washington Business for his commitment to these priorities. Drew resides right here in Union with his family. Please help me welcome State Representative Drew McEwen.
Thanks, Jim. Leon. All righty. Well, thank you for having me today. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you, and really look forward to hearing your thoughts and your questions on this. And I want to start by acknowledging Congressman Kilmer. Housing and these issues that surround it are not partisan. They're American, and the solutions lie right here. It doesn't matter from what party one's from. And I appreciate the working relationship I have with him, and he and I have done a lot together on various programs and various projects throughout our district where we overlap. And kind of to piggyback a little bit on what you said there, and twist it a little bit, is that to answer Jim's question, it's not so much what can government do, but what have we done to make it difficult for you? And let's fix that. So I want to take a different take on that, because oftentimes the very things that we do in the name of making it better, we seem to make it more complicated, more expensive, and more burdensome, and we need to get away from that. And so when we talk about affordable housing, what are the cost drivers? What is making it more expensive? And there's a number of things there. There's the law of economics, or supply and demand. Congressman Kilmer alluded to the trades. I'm a big proponent of that as well. Career and technical education. We don't have as many people going into that, because for the last few decades we've had this push that every child should go to a four-year school. That's just not the case. I'd rather have a child come out of high school, get some technical training, and be in the workforce and making a comfortable middle-wage income. We've gotten away from that. That's created a backlog. I don't know how many of you have had to have home remodeling done, or you try to build a home in the last couple of years. Good luck finding a contractor. They're just not there. And so that supply and demand works on both ends of the equation, both in the building of it and in what is already out there. So we need to address that at the educational level. We also need to look at what is preventing more from being built. And I wish I could remember this off the top of my head so I could give you the actual statistics. So I'm going to disclaimer here. I'm going to make up the number to exaggerate the point, because I don't remember the exact one. But in the King County metro area, it's something like over the last 10 years, for every 100 people that have moved there, there's been one home built. It's something crazy like that, okay? That's math. That makes it more expensive. And what are the hindrances? It's easy to cite that because that's our largest metro area in the state. And you look just here in this area in Union, and the number of homes locally here that were sold last year were actually sold to people that are working in Seattle. And they're willing to make that commute. That's how twisted the market has become. So, there's issues there that we don't have here, and vice versa. I want to hear from you as to what are those hindrances, what are the cost drivers that government has created that we can get rid of. I want to certainly work with our local units of government. If there are things that we've imposed as a state on our local units of government that have made it more costly, we need to know that so we can change that. And I look forward to having those discussions. And I was in my interview earlier with Jeff Slakey. I brought this up, and I think it should be easier to rezone properties. There's a chunk of land off of 101 that's zoned R20. It's an 80-acre parcel. That's 4 homes on 80 acres. That does not equate affordability, and we need to make it easier. I personally, I think it should be as simple that if you put an offer in on something like that you should be able to instantly rezone it through the title process and not have to go through a formal application. But some of those decisions rest at the local level. The state should not be dictating those constantly to local units of government. I think the best decisions are made locally, and they have the pulse of what's going on best in the community. So, but what else can the state be doing? I look at the city of Shelton and what my colleagues, Senator Shelton and Representative Griffith, we've accomplished in the last few years, a significant amount of capital funding into the city to address the aging sewer issue primarily. That has been a huge cost that we haven't been able to fully alleviate, but we've been able to get a lot of projects done that are borne by the ratepayers in Shelton. And so I'm all for using more of the capital budget to do things like that, have the infrastructure in place to help us spur growth economically, both on the residential side and the business side. And we're working right now to make some fixes to the North Mason sewer, extending that into the South Industrial Corridor, and Olympia City Burlington. I think that'll bring a lot both in economic opportunity on the business side and on the residential side. So with that, I'm going to pass it on. I look forward to your questions. And again, if issues come up that you see, please contact my office. And if we can do something to help fix it, we will. And if we can't, we're going to find the right direction to maybe work on that. So the best things come from hearing from what's going on in the community, and I look forward to that. Thank you. Thank you.
So our next guest is Commissioner Kevin Schutte. Kevin is serving his first term as, or now, yeah, so first term is just new year, first term as Mason County Commissioner, and currently serves on a variety of regional planning, environmental, and public safety committees. In 2017, Kevin was appointed to the State Building Code Council by Governor Jay Inslee. Prior to serving on the Board of County Commissioners, Kevin worked as a public information officer and outreach coordinator for the Washington State House of Representatives, where he also previously served as a legislative assistant. Kevin has served as a member of the Mason County Planning Advisory Commission, vice chair of the North Mason Chamber of Commerce Governmental Affairs Committee, and is currently vice chair of the Great Bend Center of Music Board of Directors. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Secondary Education and a Master's in Community and Economic Development, both from Penn State University. Kevin and his wife, Catherine, also reside here in Union, Washington. Please help me welcome Commissioner Schutte.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate, yeah, I am still in my first term. Don't let the hairline kind of pull you there. Began my third year as a commissioner just this week. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I appreciate Jim and Peninsula's commitment to addressing the issue of workforce affordability in the housing market, as well as all the other partners that worked hard to put today together. And really view this as the beginning of an important conversation that we have to have in our community, and I believe there's enough brain power in this room to continue that conversation and ultimately bring solutions to the forefront of the community. I think it's important to kind of initially just sort of establish what counties are, and that sort of frames the work that we do and how we're able to do it. We're defined in RCW as an agent of the state, and so whatever powers we have are given or not given to us by the state legislature. So I do appreciate having Representative McEwen's partnership on some of these issues, because we do really rely upon our legislature to help us achieve some of these goals at the local level. And I know that when I pick up the phone, we have a good partner in Representative McEwen here in our Mason County community, and appreciate all his support on these efforts. But what that means in a practical sense is we're limited in our ability to incentivize development across the board. And so, you know, when we ask the question of what can county government do to help address these issues in our community, there are a few things that we can do, and there are some things that we're already doing that I believe are putting us on the right track to success. First off is planning and partnerships. As I've mentioned, based on our sort of status in state law, we rely upon partnerships not only in the government sector, but also in the private sector and the nonprofit sector in order to address these issues. And along with that, you know, we have an obligation to be good planners. One of the ways that we do that is we have a Citizens Planning Advisory Commission. Marilyn's our chair of that. He or she's here with us today. And so I'm confident that there will be some ideas that kind of come out of this session today, today's work, and might help inform some of the conversations that the Planning Advisory Commission has. Where a lot of the citizen level work is done in the community, and recommendations are then made to the county board of commissioners. One of the other things that we can do is we can provide predictability and stability. I don't mean that just in the sense, although it's important, in the sense of financial stability at the county level, or maintaining, having, appropriately staffed offices and those kinds of things. Those are important. But also our ability to provide you, our customers, with, with that stability and predictability when you come in to do a project and need the county's permitting. It's important for us to be open in our communications with folks so they know what the expectation is. And so that means, predictable with timelines, predictable with fees, and on down the line. So just being able to, provide that level of assurance to the community and potential investors here that that we have those things taken care of. The other thing, and you're hearing this today from a number of people, and that's investing in infrastructure. And it ties back again all those components: planning, partnerships, and predictability. So it makes it easier for a project to pencil out when they understand the costs associated with infrastructure. And with that, we're talking about all of your sewer and water utilities. We're talking about roads. We're talking about broadband. Our partners from PB are here. They're critical partners in leveling the playing field between urban and rural communities when it comes to looking for opportunities for growth. And then that also extends beyond that in terms of conversations that we have with our school districts and public safety needs, so that we're all kind of singing from the same hymnal when it comes time to market our community and begin to address some of these issues. And it helps ensure that we're growing where we should be growing in our communities. Finally, just a couple of things that we are doing. Again, we have a planning commission that's focused on addressing zoning and development regulations. And I've been privileged to be on a commission with two other commissioners that really understood the challenges and complexities of coming up with a code that is user-friendly and works for a community. And so I tip my hat to Commissioner Netherland and Commissioner Emeritus Drexler, who looks like took the whole 2 days off and right back here in the policy conversation. And I'm confident that our newest commissioner, Sharon Trask, is going to share the same enthusiasm we have for writing policy that makes sense and allows for sensible and sustainable growth in Mason County. We've shown a model, and this isn't necessarily on the same topic, but we've shown a model with our plans and process to address the opioid crisis in the community. It started by bringing together stakeholders who were probably pretty obvious. So medical, substance abuse treatment professionals, government entities, bringing them together, bringing them around the table and addressing what the problem was. But when you get around the table like that, you start to identify where the gaps are, and you see who's missing. And then it allows you to say, okay, who else do we need to bring into this conversation? Is it transit? Is there more maybe public safety aspect of this? When it comes to our efforts, this is where you all can be a good partner in the county, is you all fill in those gaps in some way through your work in the community. And so, a similar approach for us at the county level is identifying that. Who else do we need to bring to the table? Oftentimes, and this will come as a great shock to many of you, I'm sure, the best ideas do not always originate in the commission chamber in Shelton. That's a big leap. Oftentimes, they come from people who are doing the work in the community, and they come to us and say, this isn't working, help us fix this, much like what Representative McKeon was talking about earlier. One other thing that I can't leave without saying is, as of yesterday, Mason County is now beginning online permitting. That is a big welcome to the 21st century. So you can go online, and this isn't going to be without growing pains or hiccups along the way. But being able to go online and apply for permits ranging from the most simple permit to the most complex, tracking that online, knowing, and this goes back to predictability, knowing where you are in the process, knowing what items you have outstanding, knowing when you can schedule an inspection. All of these things help make government operate more efficiently for you. And so we're really excited to see where this takes us. Commissioner Netherland has mentioned this a number of times, but municipalities that have instituted and implemented similar programming have seen reductions in wait time of up to 75%. That comes out of Maricopa County, Arizona. 75% reduction in lag time. Even if it's half of that, that's good news for you. And it's good news for our economy, and it's good news for us as policymakers. I mentioned broadband earlier. One other item I think is important to mention. So I am a member of the State Building Code Council. We just made a decision in November to introduce and implement in the State Building Code mass timber and CLT, cross-laminated timber. This was in large part due to a lot of the work in the legislature, a very bipartisan policy solution that came forward to the Building Code Council, and we were able to adopt that into the Code in November. One of the things that I'm excited about, you know, it really brought people from divergent industries together. So you had folks from the timber industry, obviously, but you know, architects and engineers had agreement on the ability for this to change the face of development, you know, as well as folks from the environmental community. But one of the things that is the most exciting about this is Washington wants us to have our growth in our urban growth areas, right? So that's where they want us to go. So we need to address density. This is a more cost-effective way by increasing our ability to use CLT, mass timber at higher building heights to address those density issues within our urban growth areas. So it's another tool in our toolbox that we can tout with developers, with investors, and say, you know, come in and this is going to pencil a little bit better for you than some traditional building mechanisms in the past. And then the other thing that I want to mention before I turn it over to Mayor Rogers is, came up a couple of times today, but the opportunity zones that Mason County has had designated will be a real game changer for our communities. That program was part of federal tax reform that was passed late in 2017. Whatever your opinion may be of federal tax reform that occurred under that bill, this is a good bipartisan solution for communities like ours. There are projects in our region that are taking advantage of the opportunity zones that will really kind of change the face of those communities. And I think Mason County can be at the forefront for rural communities and taking advantage of those opportunity zones. So that's one thing I'm anxious to work on here in 2019 is as that program comes online, attracting investment into the opportunity zones that Mason County does have. So there's a lot of things that we are currently doing. The best thing that you can do is continue to hold our feet to the fire, demand that we continue to make the process more predictable and stable and efficient for you, the taxpayer, you, the customer, and continue to bring your ideas to government so that we can help find solutions to these issues. Thank you.
And finally, the third member of our panel, the most recently elected member on the panel, Mayor Bob Rogers for the city of Shelton, was elected to the Shelton City Council in the spring 2018 special election, following the change to the council manager form of government. He was appointed by the council as mayor in May. Prior to running for office, he recently retired after 45 years in the forest industry. Forest management experience includes 12 years in Northeast Washington as a forester and silviculturalist, and another 25 years in Shelton as an inventory forester and manager of forest inventory and geographical information systems for Green Diamond Resource Company. In between, he spent about 6 years as an accountant in the sawmill and timberland businesses. He has been treasurer for the Bordeaux PTSO, Shelton High School Band Boosters, and Mount Olive Lutheran Church, currently finance chair at Mount Olive and a member of the Shelton Centennial Lions Club. Bob received his Bachelor of Science in Forest Management from the University of Idaho, later receiving a Bachelor of Administration in Accounting and a BA in Business Management from Whitworth University while working near Spokane. Please help me welcome Mayor Rogers.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you for everyone. Is this loud enough? Okay, thank you. I want to just express my appreciation for everyone coming. Housing is a critical issue, and especially I think it's a critical issue in the fringe areas that I call the center of Puget Sound, where we can't commute to Seattle, but we're affected by that. I'll preface this by those familiar with the city manager form of government. All the council members are equal. So if I say today and the council members in the room want to throw a glass of water at me, that's fine. You may take that as they don't agree with me. So another thing I'd like to start off with is Shelton. We've seen a lot of data from Mason County. And Shelton is slightly different than Mason County. And sorry to say is on the lower end of the Mason County average. And that also factors into some things I will discuss that you say, well, how do you know that number? Well, I'm not using the same numbers. I'm using the average Shelton income. I'm going to discuss a couple things that are kind of more nuts and bolts, and maybe my Audrey's up here have mentioned. The role of city government is to provide services to our residents, and those services, by definition, include sewer, water, some of the infrastructure that is provided by other agencies, other private companies, or homeowners in the county. So we're a little bit different. The city is a sole provider for those type of services. And that gets us into the whole realm of policy making around those services and also rate structures. I'm going to talk a little bit about permits and how those factor in, and so the cost of new construction and remodeling, and then a little bit about some other ideas that are kind of beyond maybe my roles as a city council person. In Shelton, we have moderate to what many consider high water and sewer rates, and we have this discussion all the time. And this kind of hit home because this 2 days ago I got an email from the mother of a new resident in town who just rented a house, and apparently had just received her first city bill and was surprised at the amount. And again, it goes to the fact that when we talk about housing, part of that cost, especially the ongoing cost, not the upfront cost that you kind of plan for, but an ongoing monthly cost of housing includes, at least in the city of Shelton, sewer, water, garbage, and all the services. I think this council, I take it personally seriously about what type of infrastructure we're going to invest in, how we do our rate schedule, and the rate schedule can affect both long and short-term rates, and we have to be really careful. This is one of our struggles, careful of not cutting our noses off, worrying about getting rates low today when we know we have infrastructure issues clear out in the future, and we have to be really careful of that and make wise decisions. And I think that's one thing we can hopefully provide through this housing issue is a council that makes wise decisions on use of investment dollars and also ratepayer funds. As Representative McHugh mentioned, the Basin 3 project in town, I think believe about $3 million project, was almost fully grant funded, had no impact on our model that we determine long-term sewer rates. Those are the kind of things that we need moving forward. Ratepayers, I think, are stressed, and we need additional resources from the state for protection of state resources such as clean water. Excuse me. On new construction, we've had, if you've been in Shelton for very long, we've had this debate for quite a while about whether lower fees entice new contractors to come in and build. And I will withhold judgment on that because there's so many variables in that question. It's very difficult to answer. But the obvious answer is very high fees will probably deter building. Those fees, though, a lot of those fees are related to our enterprise funds, sewer and water, stormwater. Again, that long-term cost model where we're looking at asset replacement, those fees are critical to that model so ratepayers don't end up needing to pay more in the future. I'm not saying we can't reduce them, I'm just saying, again, it's a call for wise decision-making, take a long-term look. Just like when you buy a house, you're not buying it. Hopefully you're not buying it for 1 month to flip it. You're buying it for 10, 20 years for your family to reside in the house. It has to be a long-term decision. There's been lots of talk of incentives and subsidies, and I would really like more information. Again, we're here to learn. I think all the council members are here to learn. Due to our structure in Shelton, I'll just be honest, we're not in Seattle. We don't have a large divergent of average homes in Shelton. They're all what we're calling workforce homes. There's very few that can support other homes by subsidies, or at least this is my opinion. We're all in that core group, except, there are some nice homes, but we're all in that core workforce group. So there's really no population that could help subsidize workforce houses, because if we go to a route of subsidized workforce housing by having others pay more, well, those people are part of the workforce housing population. So it's kind of a catch-22 and Shelton's right now alone in that. I think we're talking about all sorts of rural communities in Washington. They don't have that divergent that mass diverted between very rich, very poor. We're all kind of in that middle, and that describes Shelton. And I just personally, that is one challenge I think we really have to address. If we go with incentives or subsidies, we have to really be careful on who is paying for that subsidy, and whether we're creating more problem than we're fixing. Finally, on a couple broad issues, I think the tie to workforce, I forget what slide it was, one of the first few that Jim had, tie workforce, the housing, to small businesses, I believe. And, you know, the big solution to affordable housing in some ways, or workforce housing, is a workforce that transitions to better jobs. And for those of us in the population, I'm sure we've all remembered our first apartment building, or our first house, or mine was a trailer in the woods, that I would not want to live in. And at this point, I don't think my wife for sure would not want to live in. And we've transitioned out of that. But that transition to better housing, being able to afford more housing, was based on a trajectory of jobs, of getting a better job, working hard, getting another better job. And I think we really have to discuss how this ties to workforce, and in our communities especially, how we can encourage and such as the healthcare academy with Shelton High, those types of situations where people are immediately on a track for higher paying jobs so they can afford to get out of their basement apartment to maybe a rental, to maybe a house. And I think that's critical to our discussion. The other thing I'll say is as far as how you can help us and why the community be involved with the city council. I'm like Commissioner Shooty, hold our feet to the fire. I mean, that's I think why I'm going to say all of us ran. We're a team, and we expect our fans or however you want to describe our residents to hold us accountable for making good decisions. And if we don't, be down the council meeting to complain and to come up with better ideas. So I'll leave it with that, and thank you again for your time.
So we appreciate all of your comments, and we're going to open this up for conversation and some questions and answers and dialogue. If possible, if you can direct your question broadly, but if it's specific, do that as well. Any questions are welcome. If you do have a question that is pertaining to the federal level, Rob Richards and Dallas Roberts here again from Congressman Kilmer and Congressman Heck's office, so they'd be happy to take those questions back or talk with you offline answering those as well. So Heidi Cutchin is going to help with this microphone. And who has a question they'd like to ask?
Do y'all have the post lunch look?
Easy, Commissioner.
It's not a question, it's more of a comment and a hope. Based on something I heard here today, I have a little hope for something that may take some of the weight off of our issues here in Mason County. True, if you were to introduce a bill that would allow ADU units to go on our parcels throughout the county, maybe you could restrict it to 500 feet so it's not considered a complete building, but just an accessory building. We'd even be okay with you doing one of those special things, only for counties that are under 100,000 people, that have budget Puget Sound, and have one incorporated city. We might be able to have 500 to 1,000 over a couple-year period right away. As we were talking at the table in North Mason, there's so few that a two-bedroom manufactured home from the 80s can rent for $1,200 a month. That's supply and demand. I'm sure our citizens will be able to capitalize, maybe profit for their own ability to go into their senior years if they had something like that.
Yeah, I can chat with you on that and look at what we can do. So I'm all in favor of more options.
Drew, I was just going to ask you, and
Kilmer's office there too. Have you guys felt more focus coming to the rural communities? I mean, it feels like in the last 3 or 4 years, the federal government has been talking more about, you know, we designate a lot of resources to urban areas, but maybe the rural areas really need some more help. And I just wondered if you were feeling that too.
I think well, certainly Congressman Kilmer representing, you know, an area that's rural. I mean, so I feel that from him certainly. So there's definite sensitivity to that. I think we're still trying to get there at the state level. You know, that's frankly some of the numbers in the legislature and, you know, where representation is, and there's certainly an urban-rural divide. And, you know, and I support the idea that we're one Washington and that what is good for Shelton should be good for Spokane, et cetera. But that's not always the case, and you can't have that top-down approach. So I think we still have work to do at the state level on that. You know, you look at the number of programs, whether they be grants or low interest rate loans from the USDA, et cetera. You know, I think that the federal level, there's been a lot of responsiveness to it. The downside is there's not always the money. So the willingness is there, but not necessarily the funds. So we're getting there, but we got work to do at the state level.
Hey guys. So where do we go from here? What's the next steps? We have some good momentum to get started, but I think the follow through is going to be the key here. Interested in the ideas with the TRI partnership and from the state, city, county, and federal level, what you guys may have some ideas.
Thank you, Joe, for the question. I see this going forward in a couple of ways. One is outside the workforce, because to me that it's critical to tie the workforce. We're talking about workforce housing, also workforce education, transition from high school. So that is going independently. Getting together, first of all, in the city, I want to say one thing. We need to get together, and we're getting a new city manager. I don't want to step in his domain, but we also need to consolidate and have an understanding between staff, our contractors, and others. We talked about this, about what is required, what some improvements could be, both from staff providing contractors with feedback on vice versa, contractors providing staff with feedback. How we can improve the system, both requirements for code and also the system of permitting. I think that's critical, so we're all on the same page, so we all know what the expectations are. We may not like the expectations at the end of that meeting, some of them, but at least we know what they are. I think we need to partner more with our county. We can't, Shelton is the only incorporated city, we know that, but where the county goes, Shelton goes. Because if you look at the economic study, almost by far more people work outside of Shelton, and a lot of people from the county come into Shelton for jobs. So from an economic standpoint, we're linked, and we need development, and it's the common development, common understanding of what's critical for Shelton and what's critical for the county. I'll leave Drew out of this, but you know, and I guess I mentioned one thing that can help with funding, and I hate to use the word grants because somewhere the taxpayers paid for that grant, and some of those are not in Shelton, but we've received grants for infrastructure primarily tied to water quality. Those, we need to at least try for those, we need to try for those. I know staff is working hard lately, we continue to work hard on that. I think that's critical to spread, at least where it's appropriate, spread that resource cost out to that help.
Thanks, that's a great question. I think one of the things that Bob, I think, touched on a lot of important things. One of the areas where we are working jointly with the city is on our Behavioral Health and Housing Advisory Board. Todd Parker from our Department of Community Development is here today. Todd is really our housing expert and guru for the county. I appreciate his being here today to be a part of these conversations. But we have a member on that from the City Council, Councilmember Eric Nisco, who represents the city on that. It's a combination of county, city, nonprofit, and then citizen members as well. And I think that'll give us an opportunity to really dive into what our overall housing policies and goals are for the county and do it in a more collaborative way. So that's just one example of the work that's going on between the city and the county. And of course, through that work, we also interface quite a lot with the Department of Commerce. So we're always looking for opportunities to partner with them, whether that be for funding or other opportunities for supporting that work as well.
Just and then to wrap that with what Commissioner Schutte and Mayor Rogers said is that it's having that predictability and stability. The proverbial pendulum swinging one way or the other. We go back to the mid-2000s, and a pizza delivery guy could get a $500,000 mortgage by signing his name. And did that help home prices? No. And we know what happened in 07 and 08. But then we went into the other end of that pendulum with virtually impossible for a period of time there for your quote average person to get a mortgage on a reasonable basis. And we started to come back more towards the center, and I use that just as an example where in a brief span of 5 years we saw both ends of that spectrum happen just in lending. Well, the same thing is true though with home construction and with zoning, with permitting. When things are stable and predictable, it's much easier for people to plan and to be able to pencil out their costs. And so I look at it from the state government standpoint that what can we do to keep things stable and predictable? And that I think is one of the biggest assets. And it's not just throwing money at it. We can look at the hundreds of millions of dollars that have gone to the housing, various housing projects since I've been in office, and what have they done? Nothing has been done to address the cost. So we need to bring that focus back, and I'm committed to doing that in the legislature. And again, the stability and predictability is a very important part of all that.
If I could just piggyback a little bit on some of that too, and this is more for our present federal level. One of the things that I'm interested in, sort of the dynamic of this that I don't believe has been touched on today, but I think is important to have as part of the conversation as well, is with younger potential home buyers and the effect of student loan debt on their ability to purchase. I know I'm a proud holder of a lot of student loans myself, but so it's just having that as part of the discussion, and there's no silver bullet for that either, and that's part of growing up in a lot of ways is handling and managing your debt, and going through that process and paying that down. But that has to be a factor in what has been preventing people from getting into the home ownership market. And I think probably to some extent that has been exacerbated by people who watch House Hunters on HGTV, and they think this is what a entry-level house should look like, and kind of going back to Mayor Rogers' comments about first homes. We've all kind of had our first home, and gone through that, and there's a maybe somewhat of a disconnect, but I think the reality that our other financial indicators have on our ability to purchase a home needs to be a part of the conversation as well. You could have a well-paying job, but come out with debt on the other side. So I think financial literacy at an early age is an important part of this conversation as well.
This is a question for Drew. I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but everything I've read says the legislature is supposed to take up GMA reform this session. Based on its track record in the past, this has meant tightening up regulations, which already add 27% to the cost of a new home. How will this session be any different, not make the housing problem worse instead of better?
Well, Larry, unfortunately, I share your pessimism on that a little bit with those that are leading the charge right now. And I don't want to get into a partisan discussion on that issue, but so here, let me phrase this the best way I can. One of my jobs in leadership is to make the political argument on the House floor that the policy you are about to enact is politically not viable for you to do it. And so I'm committed to doing that. And painting that picture that to continue down that path is not good for the state, and it won't be good for the person giving the other speech. It won't be good for their political well-being either. And that's That's just the reality, I think, right now of the legislature, unfortunately. You know, the rural voice has gotten louder, and we're going to continue to do so. So stay tuned. I'm with you, and we're going to work hard to counter that.
Consistency is good, but people's wishes about housing change. And think about technology that's brought us composting toilets. Think about tiny homes on wheels. It seems to me that government needs to be more flexible, to look at regulations, to look at rules, to get away from preconceived notions of what a house is, and to encourage thinking out of the box with what should be code acceptable. We've really codified a very stable, standard, and I think difficult model in housing to move forward with. Think about container-free houses. Think about prefabs. And I guess I'd say, what can government do to make the rules less concrete?
More CLT. I think you're absolutely right, Marilyn. You know, things have changed and people do look at those options differently. So yes, when I say, you know, consistent predictability, I'm talking more on the regulatory and financial side. But, you know, it comes into play with those other things that you bring up, and I have no issue with that. We need to be able to adapt. And you look at the Hearst decision and those implications that were bearing down on the rural area with water rights, et cetera. And that came out of the northeastern part of the state, in an area where they draw their water from a river and discharge it into the Puget Sound. Whereas if you look at Mason County, and every septic system puts the water back into the ground. We're not the problem. But there's that oftentimes that viewpoint that it's somehow we are, and it's not. And I am all for other options and what works for people. Far be it for me to judge how somebody wants to live, and what how they want to build that. So, but a lot of that also stems from the way we define things. We define a child as being homeless if they live with their grandparents in some situations. That's absurd.
Yeah, I'm with Drew. Mark may shoot me, but if there's a demand and if there's reasons not to have a different code on the house, I think our council would be receptive to that. I mean, I believe in Shelton, it's 270 square feet is minimum. I think that's correct. And we have allowance for ADUs. So part of it is there. If you go down the road of a container or things that are maybe a little bit more outside the box than what we can kind of envision as in today's market, we have to have a conversation about that because there's policy for a reason, for safety, for other things. I'm not saying we couldn't get around that or wouldn't meet those that standard. I'm just saying it'd be more of a long-term discussion. The further we get away from, I agree with what history has said, this is the house, but there are some reasons why some of those codes are in effect.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think flexibility is important. If you look at tiny homes on wheels, for example, look at all the layers of regulation, that you have L&I, DOH, state, all these, sort of the alphabet soup of government regulation is sort of, added to the challenges of, being able to use those kinds of alternatives and driving the cost up on them so that, you have a 300 square foot tiny house that costs $100,000 or whatever, so it, again, I mean, I think we do need to have an all of the above kind of mentality when it comes to looking at solutions here. I think that sounds like a great conversation for the planning commission to have and bring forward to the commission.
Hi, my name is Jamie and I'm working on the CFI grant, in the grant that the floor this summit itself. And so we've written about $100 million in U.S. Treasury grants, and we have many best practices that have been successful for each unique market. So my question is, if we're successful in obtaining $1 million CDFI fund grant for Peninsula Credit Union, as we have been successful in the past, and they're able to dedicate a set amount of funding, like $10 million, are your, and I'll address, are your committees and represented agencies that you're representing the municipal, state, county, are you willing to look at participating in a formal way in assisting with that using best practices? So for example, we've heard a lot from Prime Location on this model that they've done, showing how it could pencil out to set aside 20% of affordable housing, but it would mean flexibility on zoning, permitting, and costs that drive things that were perceived as hard costs that drive up the cost. So if the credit union was to say, we can commit to doing this much in construction, conversion to mortgages, could that model be used in that the city and the county could say, yes, we will give these exemptions on this? Is that something you'd be open to looking at?
Well, that makes it easy. Yes, we'd be open to looking at it. I can't speak for the council.
Okay, county level, yes.
I would agree with that. I mean, I'm one of 3 commissioners, but I think we're certainly open to looking at every possible opportunity that's available. Is that good, Jim?
I'm not saying they're going to do that, but we're in the angle here. Second is IDA funding. It's my impression that IDA funding is the state legislature provides some of that on the appropriations, and a lot of that is used in the urban areas where there's sophisticated nonprofit agencies using that matching money. And I'm wondering if, Drew, you could be of assistance in helping us to identify an IDA match. We've had programs that move the working homeless into homeowners and the step through renting by using IDAs and refinancing of cars as collateral in a very unusual way. So that provides another opportunity. Are you willing to be a partner in identifying any IDA matching for this rural region?
Yeah, absolutely.
My final question is for Mayor. The use of CDBG funding, many communities use that for curbs and street repairs. Others use it in very innovative ways. I'm wondering if you might be open to discussing the use of the CDBG funding in a more innovative way beyond just curb and road repairs.
Again, we'd be interested in talking about it.
Thank you. I have no questions for you. Tremendous conversation. Really appreciate the dialogue and interaction amongst everybody. We're going to kind of review what's coming up here for this afternoon. We have another pair of panel breakout sessions. The first is about business opportunities. How businesses, some of our top 10 largest employers in Mason County, view workforce housing and the importance of workforce housing to the people they employ. So folks from Mason General Hospital and Family Clinics, the Washington State Correction Center, Sierra Pacific Industries, and North Mason School District will be talking and sharing about that. And then also the second panel going on in the other room is opportunities around us. So these are municipalities that have gone down this path of trying to figure out how to address the challenges around workforce housing. We have, I think, the closest is probably, it's a toss-up, the city of Lacey and the city of Port Orchard, as well as the city of Port Townsend and the city of Prosser, which is over near Tri-Cities. So look forward to those panels coming up. And then following that, a brief break, and our final keynote speaker, Dr. Randy Rowland, who's the public address announcer for the Seattle Seahawks, will be with us and kind of tie everything up and bring it all together.
And remember the spark cards, so you can get your prizes, your door prizes at the end. One of the advantages of being up here on this side of the microphone is you get to see people's socks. Commissioner Trudy has some of the most remarkable socks. We're not going to be giving these away as prizes, but just so you know, you might want to ask him about that. And one other thought occurred to me during the session too, and this is really not, it's off topic, but maybe not all that far away. I introduced one of Peninsula's board members, Steve Wright. I'll raise your hand back there. Steve is the South Kitsap Fire Chief. He ran and helped run the Command Incident Response Center for the tornado that touched down in Port Orchard and impacted just over 200 homes. 25 of those homes were red tagged and will need to be demolished. Another 28 were yellow tagged and need significant repair in order to restore that. Nick Bond, who's from the city of Port Orchard, was one of the speakers on one of the panels. That's a significant impact to housing to have 200 homes hit just in a matter of minutes. So if you have any interest around that, or maybe you want to buy Steve a beverage at the bar afterwards, I'm sure that he'd be able to show you some pictures and some examples. So again, help me thank the panel here for this afternoon. The panel sessions will start in about 10 minutes upstairs and back here again at 3:15.